Well, I'm not absolutely sure, but it might not be what it looks like, officer. Defence. Did I bollocks? What I did was raise both hands in the air, flash what I hoped was a winning smile and, in hindsight, probably purely out of habit and on account of still being half smashed, wink and give it my best shot. Looks like you've caught me red-handed, officer. I leaned forward to read her badge. Hanley. Bang to rights and don't pardon the pun. Just to clarify, she didn't actually call me interesting per se. She squinted her lovely, mistrusting eyes like she was considering her options and said, interesting. She left enough space on either side of the word to let me know that not only did she suspect I might not have an interesting bone in my body, but that everything coming out of my mouth had clearly been thoroughly rinsed in alcohol, so wasn't to be trusted in the least. About right on both counts, to be fair. If I'm honest, the speed with which I put up my hand to take the rap for a dirty great piece of graffiti defacing a formerly pristine Belsize Park footpath was a bit of a surprise, even to me. In part because I had no concrete memory of actually committing the crime. Although I did recognise the tin of paint, which I'd rescued from a skip a few weeks before with a solid plan to paint the shed door. And the words of the graffiti had a vaguely familiar ring. The problem was, it was all thrashing around in a mosh pit of other drunken memories from the night before, which included getting a right telling off from the guy in the kebab shop, and handing over a tenner and my favourite Adidas hoodie to a busker with a ukulele and a chesty cough. I had no idea how or even if any of it was connected, and if I'd taken a moment to think things through rationally, I might have reconsidered whether straight up admitting to a crime against Camden Council just to make use of a pretty lame punchline / possible pickup line was really such a great idea. But it was a split-second decision and, like I said, I did have the smoking gun in my hand. I figured that, as usual, although not always, the memory of the deed would reveal itself eventually in easy-to-digest fragments, if I was lucky, or in one stomach-churning brain dump if not. What can I say? It was far from my first rodeo. I have to admit, there was also a part of me that was just a little bit impressed with both the content and execution of the graffiti, considering the circumstances. The letters were all perfectly legible, the words were well spaced out, and, tell the truth, I wouldn't have thought I had anything quite that existential in me. A cat may look at a king. Legitimately quite interesting, I'd say. And, oh yes, I coulda, woulda, shoulda told Officer Hanley and her mate I was quite lawfully standing just inside that posh Belsize Park property because I lived there. That, in fact, it was actually my dog poking his traitorous, hairy little snout around the corner of the house, trying to stay out of sight and pretending not to know me. If I had, I might have been able to clear up the whole matter there and then. But standing there with a pounding head and a fairly serious case of love at first sight, I was already entertaining visions of a bit of a flirty interrogation down at the Camden Nick, a quick rap over the knuckles, then back home via my favourite cafe to pick up bacon butties for Dom and George, possibly with Officer Hanley's phone number in my pocket as a birthday bonus. It was an embarrassment of potential riches, but if the way things went down seems a little foolish on my part, understand, I'm not going to come right out and admit I allowed myself to get arrested just to try and get a girl's phone number. Although, for the record, I've done worse with some pretty outstanding results. Nothing much untoward tends to happen in Belsize Park that early in the morning, except maybe an accidental overstretch in a Pilates class or a punch-on between a couple of cavoodles. So the presence of a police car meant it wasn't too long before the made-to-measures started twitching. I don't think it would have been a surprise to anyone that the fuss had something to do with the resident of the garden shed of number 67, though. Because while Dom and George more than meet local expectations, in-demand plastic surgeon with Dr.